Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of the Hawks Nest. I'm Brendan Shabath here on the Nighthawk Sports Network. We're inside the Convocation Center with our head men's basketball coach here at UNG, Dan Evans. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
No problem, excited to do it.
When we first had the idea for this show, this was one of the interviews that I thought, if I can get Dan Evans for 30 minutes to sit down and talk to me and only me, I think that can be really fun. So I'm really excited, been wanting to do this for a long time. I have some heavy hitters here. Are you going to be cool with that?
I'll be all right, I think. I look forward to talking about the program, and anything's fair game.
Yeah. So let's just start. I mean, obviously, we're going into a very big season for you guys, and it's because of what you had last year. And it's the best season in program history, without a doubt. Most wins at a 28-7 record. You win the Peach Belt tournament for the first time. Obviously, the Southeast Regional, go to the Elite Eight. Just the second time in the NCAA tournament, and you have that huge success. Take me through, I know there was so much that happened last year that people didn't get to see. And it's easy to see the success and think, wow, they're doing really well. But you guys had to work really hard on the court and off the court to make last year what it was.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would go even further back than just last year. You know, we had all of those seniors, all of those fourth-year guys showed up here at the tail end of COVID. And so their first season was, I think we ended up playing 8 games. Maybe 10 games. We went like 2-8. We weren't a bad team, but it was a mess, and we got shut down several times. And this was sort of the opening experience for all of those old guys a year ago. And so for them to be able to go from that point to really the previous season, 22-23, where we were a really good team. We weren't that different than last year's group, truthfully. We just were inexperienced at winning big games. We suffered, you know, one really gut-wrenching loss in particular, but two that were pretty heartbreaking. I mean, we got beat by Lincoln Memorial essentially at the buzzer, where we missed a couple of free throws with 0.3 seconds on the clock in a game where we were down 1. We got beat by Augusta in what was really heartbreaking fashion and what would have won the league. In you know, some circumstances we couldn't control and some we could. You know, we got beat in the conference tournament in the opening round in a game where, you know, we had one of our starters not practice and try to play immediately after clearing COVID protocol. We just didn't play very well. And so we were a good team that year, but for those guys as a group of 14 to be able to stick together and to enter, you know, 23-24 with a good mindset and an approach to try to be as good as we could be was pretty neat. That did not avoid self-inflicted challenges, did not avoid unavoidable challenges that we had to manage all year, whether it be injury or unavailability or honestly the burden of expectation. You know, the burden of this is who we're supposed to be, this is competitively what we're supposed to be. And I thought that weighed on us. I thought it weighed on us to a large extent. And so our ability to sort of finally play at a level that I think we were capable of was good to see. And in all honesty, I don't think we played at that level very often during the season. You know, it really wasn't till about 10 minutes left in the Columbus State and the league semifinal that I thought we got to the place of urgency, of not so much focus, because we were always reasonably focused, but of just sort of unity and singular focus on how do we win. And I think from that point forward, we played at the level we were capable of. And I think it showed. And it showed. So it was a lot to manage as a staff, a lot to manage as individual players, but it was a testament to their strength and their commitment to each other and to the program.
When last year, and maybe it's, like you said, beyond just last year, and in this 5-year journey that you've been on, when did you realize that last year's team could be as good as they were?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I don't know. I don't know if you want to know the truth. I thought when we had a chance to go to Greece, as you know, not this past summer, but the one before. And so we get 10 practices leading into the trip. And we had, everybody was healthy at that point. And so seeing us practice day to day at that time, while we were pretty sloppy and rusty and all those kinds of things, you started to feel kind of how deep we were and how big and athletic we were at a variety of spots. And you could start to feel that. What that means, you don't really know. We played a couple games over there that we were fine, but it's, you're not very practiced. The environment is not necessarily conducive to playing at some super high level, both with, the sort of vacation-y feel that comes with a trip like that, but also just the conditions. And, we played in a gym that it was like 94 outside. It had no air conditioning. The floor, like, you don't really know what things are.
Right.
But you can start to see the bones of it. We just never really were that team all year long, to be truthful. Like, that group that practiced and played in Greece was never together for the regular season, And so I think we felt what we could be, and I think having the ability to come from the previous year and, in the 23 NCAA tournament, we beat, the 2 seed in our region, and honestly, we were better than them. And we played a good game against Lincoln Memorial in the regional semifinal, and you could feel like, hey, we have it in us somewhere, and it comes out a good bit, but it needs to come out all the time. And that whole group is back. That whole group is back, And so I think we had some sense that we could be a good team. What that was, it's hard to ever say. Some people have accused me of being sort of inherently pessimistic. I like to think I'm a realist more than anything, but you're sort of always preparing for the downsides, and you're not thinking a lot about the upsides of things.
So that team that you mentioned, a lot of those guys were back in 23, 24.
Yeah.
Some of those key pieces are not coming up in 24, 25. The one that stands out is Frank Champion for you guys. Obviously, it's just going to be a different look on the court. But Champion was also a leader in your locker room. But how have you kind of managed those expectations and managed this shift where Frank was a 4-year guy who leads program history in almost every single category? That's kind of a seismic shift when he leaves and he's not in your program anymore. You've talked so much about the depth that you guys have, but that still has to be a difficult task, I imagine, losing someone like that. I mean, he's one of the best players in the country.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, Frank's a tremendous player, and much, way beyond that, he's a tremendous member of the program. And his relationships with people were always strong. I think the shift internally is probably not as great in terms of how we operate as people might think. Frank's attention was largely from the outside. Everybody knew how good a player he was, loved him, and all those things, but the attention and the profile came from things that are really outside the program. Everybody knows how much he contributed, but what he contributed was valued in the same way that Eric Jones's were, and Greg Billups were, and Giancarlo's were, and Case's were. Like, that contribution didn't put him on a pedestal within the program. And so from the way we operate and the way we feel, there's really no change for us. Now, from a basketball perspective, we're different, obviously. We're different because Frank's lost and our other seniors lost. So the totality of that has created challenges for us, most especially, 3 or 4 of them are all in the front court. And so our front court becomes much more inexperienced quickly for this particular group that is ahead of us. But, we are very appreciative for what Frank and for Greg and Eric and Jonky and Case, what they gave to the program and what they contributed is immeasurable. I just talked about where we started with them in terms of COVID, in terms of where our program was at that time and the uncertainty surrounding it from a developmental standpoint. And when they walked out, we were the Southeast Regional champions, had finished second in the league back-to-back years and really could have won the league in both seasons had we been just a little bit better and a little bit sharper. It's a big difference. And it's not lost on any of us what their role was in that. But that's what we're supposed to get to. We're supposed to get to that point where people who contribute a lot over their career graduate and move on. That's what we're trying to do. That's the program we're trying to create. And so it'll be new in some ways, but not new in many, many more ways.
So you talked about those guys leaving as Southeast Regional champions. Yeah. I say now is the part of the show where we give the people what they want and talk about that night. Yeah. The last time we were in this building in a UNG competitive aspect was for that Southeast Regional championship. What was so interesting to me about that game, and as many people know, I joined late in the season for you guys just in February, so I was kind of catching the tail end of this season and this run that you guys had. But you're facing Lander in the Southeast Regional Championship. That matchup had been building all season long, and kind of for years now against a Lander program where you guys have gone back and forth from before your time, ever since these two schools first started facing each other. But that was the first ever postseason matchup. And I think no one knew what was going to happen, but we all knew it was going to be good. And that night just feels like an ethereal kind of memory now, looking back on it. It feels like it was its own thing, separate from everything else that happened that calendar year. What do you remember about that night?
Yeah, I think my memory is very similar, to be honest. You know, there is a certain element of it that is a blur because the competitive environment was so fierce and so important. You know, from what it meant to both teams, and specifically within our program, what it meant. The year prior, we had played Augusta here in a regular season game late in the year, very late. Might have been the second to last regular season game, and it was a conference championship game, in that whoever won would assure a share of the league championship, and that game had an intensity and a energy around it that we had never had here in Convo. And I remember in the game, you could feel it. And then after the game, you could feel we lost in really, really heartbreaking fashion. Flash forward a year, the regional final was like that times like 10. And a lot of that was driven by just the crowd. You know, I think the intensity of the game was very similar, and the level of play, truthfully, was very similar, if not the same. But the crowd was so into it, and there were so many people, you know, maybe as much as anything, and it was so universally for the Nighthawks that I could feel it personally on the sideline. And I told this story a little bit when in the post-game press conference or whatever, but walking out with a few minutes left in the warm-up, it was very surreal. You know, before every game, I ask the staff when they come back in, like, are there people there? Like, is it, you know, how's it feel? And they kind of just tell me something that's going to calm my nerves every time. But this time they were just like, they like had like a look of sort of shock on their face. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, there's people here. And I was like, okay, cool, you know. But walking through the tunnel and coming out, you know, gives me chills just thinking about it, because it was packed. And not only was it packed, you could see people streaming in from, you know, right up there from the main entrance and still filling in like every corner of the place. And by the time we got to the starting lineups and the national anthem, like when they went to announce the regional game, you know, like welcome to, you know, Dahlonega and the UNG Convocation Center for tonight's matchup, Lander University Bearcats versus, and you literally could not hear North Georgia Nighthawks. It was so loud and everybody was on their feet. And like, to be honest, like that's what we've been trying to build. To be perfectly frank, that's what we've been trying to build. And then you play the game. You know, and then you got to play the game. And we really, you know, if I remember right, Frank got in foul trouble in the first half. He did not play a lot. And, you know, Colin played well again in the postseason. Case had a couple really big baskets for us in the first half. Giancarlo had a couple mid-range jumpers. And we just kind of like, we played like the team we have played like, are capable of playing like. And we really seized control of the game. I mean, I think we were up 9 with, I don't know, just a couple minutes left. And I think people in the crowd, as well as probably our own guys, start to feel like, man, we're going to win this. And all of a sudden you get a little loose. You know, we went 1 for 2 from the free throw line. Someone comes down and hits a 3, and then you go 1 for 2 in the free throw line, and then they get a bucket. And it's like the last 50 seconds took about 20 minutes of real time. And then Caden caught the ball, you know, and then Caden caught the ball on the full court inbound. And it just was like, the roof blew off this place, you know, and I think it probably blew off all of our program's emotions. I mean, it was very, very, very cool.
That moment when Caden catches the ball is the culmination and the relief of those years you talked about prior to that. What did you feel when you see it land in his two hands and he runs away from the defense and you can finally realize, wow, we won?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought the relief came a little bit more in the Peach Belt Conference Tournament. I think winning that, because that was a struggle for us. We kind of got banged up, and we just weren't in a great place mentally again until the very late in the semifinal. But I thought winning that was a little bit more of a relief, more of a like, okay, like we've accomplished something we felt like we could accomplish. We are a good enough team to do certain things. Okay, this is great. And then there was a little bit of the buildup because at one time it wasn't certain that we would be the #1 seed. We didn't really know, particularly going to the conference tournament, that we had a chance to be the #1 overall seed. But with Aiken getting beat and Lander getting beat in the opening round, and then Lincoln Memorial I think got beat in theirs, and we would have been above Lincoln Memorial probably in any case. But you don't know. And so when we get the #1 seed, it became like a different kind of buildup. Now it became like, well, what's it going to be like here? What's the response going to be? Are people in the community going to get behind this? Like, we were on spring break. That was the tail end of spring break. So round 1 and 2 were Saturday and Sunday at the end of spring break. And so it's like, are there going to be any students here? Like, we love the Blue Crew. Like, that is our connection with the students here on campus, and specifically the ones that attend the games. It's real. It's real. And we feel it as a program, and our guys try to lean into it, and we try to lean into it. And so are they going to be around, just practically speaking? And so when we got into the first round against Wingate, people were here. It was one of our best crowds of the year up to that point, I would say. And that's pretty neat because that's not always the case on Saturdays. There's a lot going on and there's different things that happen. And so that was neat. And I think that really set off a like, okay, now we're in this. Now we're really all about hoops, and we're really all about trying to be as successful as we possibly can. And we controlled that game. We very much controlled the Catawba game as well, especially in the second half of both those games. And then it was just like, okay, what's about to be here? And now the regional championship became about just accomplishment. I don't think there was a relief of winning within a singular game, but not a like broad scope relief. I thought it was more a testament to, hey, the program's good. Like, the program's good. The guys in this program have worked their butt off and have earned exactly what this is. And the people in that gym that night have a memory that will last forever. Forever. Like, that's one of those events that 20,000 people are going to say they were there, but we know there was only 3,700. Because it was special, and it will live on, I think, for a long time.
One of the moments that stands out in that night for me was immediately after you guys win, you run over to the Blue Crew and you stand on that bottom step in front of them and fist pumping, and you've got the whole Blue Crew in front of you. That was just a really cool moment, I remember. But going back to the game, you talked about the thing that stood out to me, and I'm in charge of writing the recap when the game's over. So while the game was going on, I'm noting key moments that happen. And the key moment comes at 16:41 or whatever it was when Frank Champion picks up his second foul, like you talked about. He didn't play the rest of the first half. And you guys took, if I remember, a 5-point lead into the halftime break. And I think that's when, for me at least, it became very real, where without one of the best players in the country, against a Lander team that has just had your number this year, you guys found a way to beat up. And it was because of that depth that you had talked about all season leading up to that. That came proof positive in that first half of that regional game.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, we have good players, and like, we play a certain way, and Frank's style of play, we really leaned into as a group, and we're comfortable with that. But I think everybody felt confident in who we were, period, full stop. Like, who we were when we were focused on things that were just about winning. And one of the neat things about when you get deep enough into the postseason where everybody feels the importance of it, the weight of it, is that you get the best out of everybody. Like, it really does no longer become about anything other than winning. And the NCAA tournament does that. I think the conference tournament got to that point for us, though I don't think it started that way. And so that was a testament to that. you know, is that ability for a whole variety of people to be able to play the way we need to play and to contribute in their way and to execute what we do together. That wasn't surprising to us. It wasn't what we would choose. We wouldn't choose for one of our good players to get in foul trouble. It's not like, oh man, this will be great, let's see what happens. Not the time of year maybe for that, but wasn't surprising.
Another thing, and I have on the show sheet here, so to speak, is asking about the Elite Eight game versus West Texas. And maybe before we get into the specifics of that, because we're still on.
Great.
Right.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Because we're still on the Southeast Regional. I've always wanted to get your perspective on what you see and what you feel, what Dan Evans sees during a college basketball game. Because you're known in some regard for wearing your emotions on your sleeve, we'll put it. And your reactions to the game are very real and they're heightened. And it's a very real emotion that we see from you on the sidelines. And to me, I feel like when you're watching a game, it's the court and everything else is black. And there's just, you're so zoned in and so focused on what's going on in that exact moment. And that's why we see that emotion. I'm just wondering what your perspective and opinion is on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're all working on certain things about ourselves. And I would say my emotions being on my sleeve is a real thing. And it is authentic. It is genuine. It's maybe not ideal in all situations. And so I think if I have a weird amount of people, in my opinion, that do bring up, oh, we really enjoy watching you on the sideline, which is sort of not really the point of why
there is a basketball game
yes,
going on.
They should be there for our players and just the program at large. And so I don't love that necessarily about myself, but it is real. Like, we ask ourselves as a program to be who we are, period. And that's good, that's bad, that's positive, that's negative, strengths, weaknesses, all that stuff. And so what I really see is pretty broad, to be honest. It's almost like a sort of hyper awareness of everything that's going on, you know, and that sort of goes beyond the court, to be honest with you. You know, there are times where you notice things that go on, you know, in the crowd, or you recognize people, or you see stuff. Like, it's sort of like just everything's heightened, you know, whatever the adrenaline that's pumping through you really heightens all your emotions and heightens all of your senses in a way. And so, you know, you're trying to watch what's on the floor, and you're trying to assess, both myself and Benny and JC, like, we're trying to assess what's going on in the game so that we can coach our guys. Because while my emotions are high and real and perhaps a little bit, you know, unregulated, like, that is not and cannot get in the way of helping our players perform to the best of their abilities. I want to make sure that our program is always on a competitive edge and has an intensity about it that allows us to compete in the way that we want to compete. We need to compete as if we have never accomplished anything within the program. And that's kind of easy when that's true. It's a little easier when we were trying to build this for 3 or 4 years and try to get to a place of, like, no, it's us versus them. Like, we very much want to maintain that. That is a harder thing to maintain when you go to the NCAA tournament, you win a game in the NCAA tournament, you're picked to win the league, you have a bunch of return. Like, it's harder to keep that. And so I think a year ago, some of my things may have even been amped up a little bit as a result of some of that stuff. Where that leads, I guess we'll find out here as we go forward. But you're just trying to help the guys play well, period. And everything we do as a staff, and really everybody on the bench, should be about, how do we help the 5 guys on the floor play well, and how do we help the guys that are about to go in or have just been in, how do we help prepare them to play well during their next stretch?
And so you guys go from an environment with almost 4,000 people in here, record crowd, first regional championship, everything is packed into this building in that game. And you win, and you go to Evansville for the Elite Eight, and it's a completely different environment. I mean, that's an 8-hour trip for you guys, and UNG was the closest school of the 8 teams on the men's bracket that were there. And so it's just, and I forget, I believe that was around some sort of break or something, but obviously there's not the same crowd in Evansville that there is right here in Dahlonega.
That's right.
And that's just, it's a bigger arena, different atmosphere. You guys had the late game against West Texas as well, so it's just a vastly different environment. And out of the gates, you guys kind of get blitzed early, fight your way back in that game, even take the lead in the second half, and West Texas just kind of runs away with it at the end. But that was obviously a hard-fought game for you guys, and obviously a season-ending loss at any moment, whenever it is going to hit hard. I remember after the game, though, and it was after the press conference, on your walk back from the press conference to the locker room, and if I'm revealing state secrets here, shut me up. And
yeah, okay.
But I remember you were taking that loss rather hard on yourself and thought you could have coached a better game, and that was kind of a moment that you shared with yourself personally about, man, I could have been better there. And that was an emotion that you couldn't hide then. I'm wondering where that came from and what maybe you thought you could have done differently, because it was such an it would have been so easy to just roll over in that game and get beat by 30, and you guys didn't. You came back probably sooner than people would have thought in the second half, and like we said, had the lead for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I think we should have done better. You know, I didn't think we played the right way to start the game. I thought we were a little bit caught up in the moment and the sort of intensity, and West Texas is a very good team. So let's make sure that's very clear. Like, they are a very good team who's been in that exact spot before. And so I thought their experience showed and our inexperience showed in that environment, and that is players and coaches alike. And so there were just some advantages that we had that it took us too long to play to. You know, if you go back and look, you know, we went down like 19-2. Frank got 2 fouls again, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and we were not playing through the rim the way we needed to. You know, we had, in our opinion, had a decided advantage at the rim, whether it be Frank, Colin, Giancarlo, Eric. Like, we had an opportunity to really blitz the rim every possession through our post players that I think would have been really difficult for them to deal with. And we just didn't do that for a long period of time. And then we started to. And once we did, and once we leaned into that, you know, heck, we were up 2 with 7.5 minutes to play and had a layup. Man, it went 8.5 minutes to play and had a layup. And a good, like, in that environment, a wide open layup. And all of a sudden we missed that, and 2 minutes later we're down 2, and then they hit a couple, like, those swings are really critical. And it's my responsibility as our head coach to ensure that our program knows exactly what we're trying to do. And clearly we didn't. You know, clearly we didn't. And so that is really frustrating. That was, I remember that walk. I remember how I felt. I don't feel any differently as I sit here today about the game. And so doing this profession, playing or coaching, like, you live with a lot of things and a lot of regret and a lot of moments of, well, geez, I just wasn't good enough there. And, you know, I'm no different. You know, I'm no different. But I do think our team was good enough to maybe do a little bit more. Would have been exciting, obviously, do a little bit more. But it is very different. The Elite Eight is very different than the regional. The structure of it, the schedule of it, the kind of travel component, the environment component, you know, like, you know, you talked about it being around a break. Well, we played on a Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central Time when class was in session here in UNG. Like, we had a group of maybe 12 to 15 students that came, which was really cool. We had a bunch of family come, some you know, local fans came, but, like, there's only so many people that can get 8 hours away to Evansville, Indiana on a Tuesday night. Like, and we get that. That's not lost on us. So all of that does make for a little different thing. And then just the travel and the responsibilities while you're there, all that is different. And I think, you know, if we're ever able to get back, I think we'll know a lot more of, hey, this is the best way to handle this. This is what we need to do, and this is what we need to stick to, or maybe we need to adjust this, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, to be there and to have that experience, tons of cool things with it. Tons of cool things. Just really ultimately disappointing.
And I think that's a real nice segue to something that I did want to talk about that you mentioned earlier, was not just the Blue Crew, but the support that this team and this program has here in this town. And we saw, I mean, 12 to 15 students, like you mentioned, making the trip, and a bunch of family members and supporters and donors. You guys had a crowd of probably 50 people walking you out of the hotel on that Tuesday night of the game.
That was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible. That they, you know, they organized, you know, Dr. Shannon and Jeff Tarnowski in the athletic department organized like a dinner that was in our team hotel, which is probably a little bit unusual now that I think about it, but in our team hotel, and it was like timed up essentially to give us a hawk walk. The arena was literally across the street, so it wasn't like that far or anything, but as we left the hotel to give us a hawk walk, and the way the hotel was set up, the second floor, which is where our rooms were, you could walk out of it and you were on like a little landing that was open to the lobby below you, and we would walk down those stairs and essentially go out the door. And I can remember walking down the hall, and I was with, I think I was with Frank and Colin, because they were roommates, and you could hear like just noise. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's like Nighthawk supporters. That's our fans. And they're like, no. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And you get, as we got closer, it just got louder and louder. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And we walked out onto that landing, and like, it was like kind of like shaking a little bit. And you could sort of see some people. You weren't like necessarily seeing everybody by face, but you could tell there were people down there, and they were loud. And they were loud. I literally had to walk into a different area because like it was pretty emotional. I mean, it was pretty emotional to go from, again, where we started with all of this, and you know, the things selfishly, personally, the decisions I made to try to come down here as a family with my wife, like, it's pretty emotional to have that feel like a little bit of a capstone of the first phase of what we're trying to do. And heck yeah, it was really loud when we walked down, and there was tons of people. It's very, very cool. That is part of what makes it disappointing to get beat, though, too. You do feel like you're letting people down, and could have created an even better experience for everybody. And so it's like, it's awesome because it raises you to a level, and then you feel bad because you want to continue raising it.
But you know more than anybody, that's sports, that's life, that's just the way it goes. But that moment in the hotel, the Hawk Walk, was to me, it was, all right, we're going to play basketball now, finally. The team is dressed. They are leaving the hotel. This whole week of build-up and travel and booking hotels and get there, and all these people, and all of a sudden, all right, now it's time to play basketball. And everybody was so excited. And this team that we love is leaving, and we're going to send them off in a big way. And that's really kind of what it feels like. It's not just support. It's not just hype. There's a lot of love in this program. And in 5 years, you guys have gotten that, you know, since you got here. Where does that come from? I mean, to me, what it looks like is you've developed a family environment. You've taken the Midwestern values that you have as a guy from Ohio and having family and people that you care about close to you, and you've brought it down here to Dahlonega with your program, and then extended that to the extended family of the program.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that Amy and I decided to come down here and to accept Mrs. Reeves' job offer was that we felt like it was a slightly larger platform to build the program that we wanted to build. And one of the core tenets of that program is that it is a family, and I want to continue and want to impact the community around us. It is very important to me that our program feels a part of Dahlonega, period. Like, full stop. Like, that is what we're trying to do. We do it through camps, we do it through some community outreach, we try to do it through just our personalities and being present, we do it through trying to connect with students as best as we can. We try to do it through our guys being a part of campus, you know what I mean? And I think there's a ton of work that goes into that, but it's really sort of an organic and genuine approach. It's not, we don't want it to be contrived. We don't want it to feel like forced. And I think little by little we've been able to become ingrained in the program. And I think our success is, quite honestly, the most important factor in that. If we were bad, and if we ever become bad, it's probably not going to feel the same. but our goal will remain the same. Like, and that's what made the regional final just so special, is that it showed that it's possible. I doubt the arena is going to be like that night to night, obviously for you know, reasons that are very clear. But who knows? Maybe, you know, maybe we can sustain people's interest level, sustain people's valuing of the program and the experience of being around it. And I do think the Hawk Walk was a cool sort of exclamation point on some of that stuff, because most of those people are the people that are closest to the program. And when I say that, I really mean families of the players and coaches, you know, and administrators, both athletic and university, that are very close to the program. And those are the people, most especially families of the players, that have gone through the most. Like, the players and their parents go through, and coaches go through the most. Like, they're there when we lose heartbreaking games. Like, they have to pick their son up when he doesn't play, you know, and he wants to play. And they have to support their son when he makes a mistake that maybe costs the game, just like they get to celebrate when we do good things. And they have to deal with the ups and downs. They have to deal with the forgiveness and embracing of the down times. And so to be in that spot was very cool for those folks. But the regional final felt very much like a community version of that same thing.
Right.
Of that same thing. And so we want that intimacy. We want that relationship. We hope to sustain it as best we can, really forever. I mean, that's the goal, is for our program to be able to be that kind of lightning rod for people to feel connected, to feel a part of something, to feel like they're rooting for something that is important. And we will not win every game. We will not go to the regional final every year. There's all sorts of things that won't happen, but I do think those relationships and that connection can absolutely remain, and we will work hard to help ensure that.
You talked about this being a bigger platform to build the program that you want. I want to go backwards 5.5 years from today,
okay,
which is probably just before you get hired in April of 2019.
Yeah.
As a guy who was coaching at Ohio Dominican,
Yeah.
who had spent his whole life, if I'm correct, in the Midwest up until that point,
Yeah.
pretty much, why, like, you talked about this being a bigger platform, but what did you see? Because largely up until that point, North Georgia men's basketball had not won anything. I think it was 7 winning seasons since the turn of the century before you got here. What did you see in this place, in this town, before you took that job to take that leap? And I think your son TR must have been 3 or 4.
3.
And was Maddie born yet, your daughter?
Maddie was probably like 15 months old.
Right. So you've got this budding young family, and you've been in the Midwest and in Ohio for a very long time. What did you see that makes you take that leap to then come down here and start your life, you know, as a young family here?
Yeah, I mean, so I flew in for my interview and drove up in a rental car, and this place was very foreign to me geographically. Like, I think I'd been to Atlanta for a Final Four once, but we flew in and we never left Atlanta. You know, went to a nice restaurant in Buckhead with a Hillsdale College donor. That was really a wonderful meal. But other than that, I'd never been anywhere near here. And so pulling up and seeing the mountains in the distance, and ultimately pulling into the Smith House and getting to walk around the square, and the university being sort of attached to the square, like, just felt right to me. You know, it felt right to me, and I didn't at that time have any knowledge nor appreciation nor opinion of the history of neither the school nor nor the program. Like, I really didn't know that much, and I don't want to say I didn't care, because I cared, but it wasn't important to me in terms of making the decision one way or another. We're a very cool university in the sense that we have a cool geography. We are a part of a community that is close-knit. We have a neat downtown environment, and the university is growing and has a good education for students. And those are the things that I felt like all aligned to say, hey, if we get the right kind of people and we can build this the right way, this is something that can be a shining light in our community to inspire others, hopefully to love basketball, but just broadly speaking to inspire them in their life, you know, and to pursue things. And so I felt like that was possible largely because of the size of the university, and its connection with the community, and it's sort of like it's embedded here. And I think that stuff has proven to be very true. And I didn't know about the core at that time, which is an incredible feature of this place. And I didn't know about the rich tradition that athletics experiences, as well as the core experiences, and how that extends to the community. I didn't know any of that on the front end, but all of that I think has dovetailed really well to, you know, support the decision that Amy and I made. And it was not easy. It was not easy. Ohio Dominican was very good to me. It was very good to me. You know, it gave me an opportunity when I was 29 years old to be a head coach in you know, at the Division II level. Like, it's a wonderful city. I was really lucky to be there, and I'm really lucky to be here as well. And I think our family feels the exact same way.
So Ohio Dominican before UNG. Hillsdale before that, small school up in Michigan. For those that don't know, you recruited some of my high school rivals, which I will never understand to this day.
They did a great job for us.
But so all of that leads up to the regional championship and an Elite Eight appearance last year. Now it's time for this season, and there's a lot of expectations around this year. And everybody knows that this is going to be a different team, but I think a lot of people still think this team can be very good and get back to that moment where they were last year. And if you get to the Elite Eight again, then who knows, anything can happen. The start of the year is very intriguing to me. You're going to play in the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame Classic that's down in Lakeland, Florida, hosted by Florida Southern this year. Your first two games, St. Thomas Aquinas, a top 25 team that went to the regional last year, and Minnesota State, the reigning national champions. What made you get in this event? Because there's 4 Elite Eight teams there. Minnesota State, you guys, Nova Southeastern is there as well, Gannon, and the other 4 that are in this 8-team event are perennial powerhouse programs. What made you see this event and think we have to get in that and we got to play there?
You know, it's really the premier preseason event at our level. And so it's been going on for, you know, at least a handful of years, and it very much is like the best programs in the country. Like, every year when you go back and look at it, the best programs in the country are there. And so you have to be invited to attend it. So it's not like my desire to be in it really is of no consequence to, you know, to John McCarthy, who runs it. But him and I had gotten connected about sort of something else, truthfully, and, you know, we struck up a relationship, and he obviously had a great deal of respect for our players and what they were accomplishing. And when we got invited to do it, like, I was sort of all in, our administration was all in, and I'm very appreciative of that because it's a very expensive endeavor to go down there and to do this. But I think there is a sort of certification that comes from being included in it, that the program is at a certain level and that you have a certain profile, and that your expectations are of a certain caliber. And so that stuff's all neat, and you know you're going to play good teams. And so we happen to play St. Thomas Aquinas and Minnesota State, but you don't even know who you're playing until you know, pretty late in the summer when we found out. And so you got to be open to playing whoever else is in it. You don't get really any say over any part of that. And so I think it's fun, the teams we play, because regionally they're different, you know what I mean? And their style of play is very different. And so I think those things are both very cool and will be a good test for us. You know, you talked about the expectations of the program. Like, we don't really talk about it that way. You know, there is no, like, we got to get to this point, or we got to do this, or we got to accomplish that. Like, it's really never been talked about in our program. I think there is an internal expectation that has grown within our program for how we operate and how we should compete. And I think there's a knowledge of maybe what that would mean we should be competing for. But, like, we don't talk about, oh, let's win the league this year. Like, that's kind of should be the goal for everybody every year. Like, it's not really what we're focused on. But we are a very different team. You know, and we're not a very different team in the culture. We're not a very different team in the sort of what we think we can be, but we are different in that we are much more inexperienced than last year's group. You know, really the last 2 years' group. You know, we return a lot of good players who have, you know, a bunch of experience and have competed at a really high level, whether it be, you know, AJ, who obviously had tremendous accomplishments. Caden was tremendous as the year went on last year. Colin Turner, great in the postseason, has continually developed. Hunter Shedenhelm and Sutton Smith have, you know, started every game for us in our NCAA tournament team from the previous season. It's like we have returners back. We have a couple redshirt freshmen that were with us all last year. Like, we have returners back, but we have people that will be in the rotation that don't have experience on the court, and so the scars and the scars that we all carry from experience, not everybody has on the floor.
Right.
And so there'll be a significant amount of development for our program over the course of the season, which I think is a little different specifically than last year's team. Last year's team was fairly fully formed, pretty much fully formed, the moment we started. Now, we had all sorts of goofiness and in and out and injury and all that stuff, which I think made us kind of ebb and flow. But like, we kind of were what we were going to be. We just had to get right in a variety of ways. This year's group is truly like an unformed ball of clay. Like, what we are today is likely to be different than what will be a month from now, and most especially when you think about 3 months from now. You know, we have guys that will get a ton of experience. Obviously, health will get better or worse. And we'll just gain some valuable experience. So I suspect what we'll find is that come February, I think we can be a good team. There's no doubt about it. But like, what we are is in some ways unpredictable. It's hard to know. Like, we're going to have to grow in our own basketball identity over the course of the season.
What does it mean to not talk about those expectations? Why is that important? Because you know this, obviously, but your guys naturally have those expectations and those conversations themselves.
No doubt they do.
In their apartments and in the locker room when you guys aren't there about, hey, we could be good this year, we can get back there, we can do this, we can do that. But why is it important for you to not necessarily bring those things up in a concrete conversation with your team and just focus on getting better today?
I mean, most of it's just like what helps people perform and develop the right way. And like, for us day to day in practice to be talking about some goal, some accomplishment that we don't specifically control in its entirety, that is 4 months away, 5 months away, is kind of ludicrous. You know, like, the season is not a success nor a failure based specifically on, do we win this championship? Do we accomplish this goal? Do we get into this tournament? Do we win these? Like, because you don't control all of that. And quite honestly, you only control a very minimal amount of it. And so, you know, we've been a very good team. We haven't won a regular season conference championship. Both of our last 2 teams were good enough to do that. And we didn't do it. And we didn't accomplish that. That doesn't mean we're failures. You know, it doesn't mean we haven't done something well. It just means we have to be a little bit better to accomplish that type of recognition. And so for us in practice, when we get together later today, like, I don't want us thinking about some game that happens the first week of March. Like, I don't want to think what's the standings going to be in the middle of February. We have no idea. We have no idea. And that sort of requires a lot of good luck, requires a lot of high-level performance and high-level preparation. And so what we're focused on is the high-level preparation. And to do that, we have to be focused on what we're doing today. We have to focus on, can we jump to the ball well enough? Can we have the right emotional tenor? Can we compete the right way? Can we take care of the ball today? Because if we can take care of it today, it gives us a better chance to take care of it tomorrow. And if we can take care of it tomorrow, and we do that 80 more days consecutively, 90 more days consecutively, 120 more days consecutively, then those kinds of accomplishments and recognitions perhaps are there at the end of it. But we might do all of that and they're still not there. We just want to maximize who we can be and develop the best we can.
What are you most excited for in this next season?
Oh, man. I'm excited kind of for the whole thing, to be honest. I think we have some cool experiences with small college basketball, that's ahead. I think we have a trip to San Antonio that I think will be really neat. But my favorite part of this whole thing is to be around the guys. Is to have the relationship with the guys and to see them grow, them develop, to just laugh and joke around and pick on each other and grow. I'm excited to see who we are on February 1st. I'm excited to see how our freshmen develop and grow. I'm excited to see how our red shirts develop and grow. It's excited to see how our older guys adjust to slightly different roles and standings within the program. Like, I'm excited for all of that stuff, even though it's not probably always fun every day, you know, quite honestly. You know, the development and growth isn't the thing. You wake up in the morning and you're not celebrating it, but it's the best part. It's the best part, and it's the part that feels closest to my duty as our head coach, and honestly, it feels closest to the mission of the program.
And there's a lot of new around this program, new players, new logo, new court, a lot of new coming in this season. New head or new assistant coach, excuse me, as well as in J.C. Cavan joining you guys this year.
That's right, and that's how it's supposed to be. You know, like we talk about those guys graduating, like we're supposed to build something that is sustainable. You know, build something that can be continually improved and pushed and prodded, and it doesn't mean the accomplishments always mirror each other, but you're trying to give yourself as many bites at those apples as possible. And so it is a fun time because it is new and it is different. It will not be the same, but I think that's part of the joy in it. Part of the joy and part of the fun of the ride will be that it is different, you know, and that it is a kind of a new group, but with a lot of players that people are very familiar with. You know, it's going to be fun.
And while we're on the topic of assistant coaches, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your football team. You have a Chicago Bears fan, for those that don't know. You have surrounded yourself with a Detroit Lions fan and Ben Casanova, a Green Bay Packers fan. Do you feel backed into a corner for football season between Ben and I right now? I
don't really. I mean, my wife's a Detroit Lions fan, so, you know, and I went to college in Wisconsin, so many of my friends are Green Bay Packer fans, and so I don't feel backed in a corner at all. I have the same pride in the Monsters of the Midway as I've always had, and I have the same level of expectation for disappointment that I've always had. So I don't feel any kind of way that is negative about the people around me and their fandom. I don't understand it. I don't know how you could cheer for those teams personally, but for me, I'm excited to be a Bears fan. I'm excited the Bears have a little bit of enthusiasm around them, and I'm most excited to watch my kid cheer for the Bears because that's awesome.
Yeah, TR is a big Bears fan.
Big Bears
you took him to a game recently.
That's right. We were able to go to Chicago right before fall break for the county schools here. Ended up leaving him and his sister in Chicago with my parents, but yeah, when we took him up there, we got to go to a game. It was pretty cool.
And you talked about the expectation of disappointment. You're talking to a lifelong Lions fan, so I know where you're coming from. But I'm on the other side of the fence now, and it's a good feeling. But obviously fun to have that competitive spirit. What's it like when the Bears and Packers face each other with you and Benny?
You know, we've grown into an acceptance of each other's fandom. You know, Ben played for me, obviously, and so we're used to the back and forth. I mean, the Packers have been much better than the Bears, so it's not really like I've been in much of a position of strength. Really at any time, probably any time in my entire Bears fandom, you know, for that matter. And so we're used to it now. We're very respectful of each other. As his elder, I try to make sure I have a mature approach to how I talk to him about the Packers. And I do the same thing about the Lions. Maybe not so much with my wife, but with you, I try to be very mature and understanding of where people are at until the Bears beat them, if that ever happens, in which case I will lose all maturity and all restraint.
Well, for those that forgot, this is a basketball show, so very excited for this upcoming season, Dan. Very glad that we got to sit down and talk with you, and we just appreciate the time, as always.
Thanks. Appreciate it.